Recording in progress. That's what we should call the show. Recording in progress. We are back. 2/3 of us are back on the Ultimate Sports Network, I should say, with a Real Boxing Talk. Mr. Farmer is on a nice excursion. We'll let him explain that when he gets back. It's kind of fun for him. Anyway, John and I are here. We're going to talk about a few things boxing-wise. We just spent the last hour not talking about boxing, so we're actually going to talk about boxing. We're going to start with the fight that has been the most recent fight. We'll get into the stuff that's not going to happen or might happen later. The most recent fight that was publicized was Joe Joyce and Carlos Takam, or however you want to say it. I always want to put the accent in the wrong spot. Give us your thoughts on that, and I have someplace we're going with that.
You usually do, you and your segues and all that kind of stuff or whatever, but Joe Joyce just blows my mind. You know, I thought when he fought Bryant Jennings that he would, you know, a few years ago would have issues because Bryant, he's not a great fighter, but he's a solid fighter. And I thought his little things that he does would give him problems because Bryant Jennings, as you remember, gave Klitschko some problems before Klitschko stopped him. Now, we're talking years ago, but Joe Joyce dominated him with no problem. He beat up an over-the-hill Stavern extremely easily. Not that that's a lot, and I don't want to disrespect Herman Stavern, who's one of the greatest guys in the world. I talked to him a few times in Vegas, Frank, and he's just such a decent guy. So sorry, Mr. Stavern, if you hear me, I don't mean that. It's just that's what happened in the fight. But the only time he really impressed me in a sense, and, you know, we always talk about styles, Frank, is when he fought Daniel Dubois, who, of course, I thought would beat him. And Dubois was maybe winning on one card and it was close on the other two, but Joyce was hanging in, and he's got that, not necessarily a George Foreman-like telephone pole jab, but he's got a very solid jab. And, you know, he's a silver medalist from the Olympic Games and all that jazz. But he always, and I understand off air when you made your comparison to Winky Wright, is that he, to me at least, even when he wins, I still go, You know, I even put it in my article when I wrote it up. I said not against when he stopped Carlos Takam in 6. Not impressive. That's what I said. Not an impressive performance. And this guy that I know online, who's a big boxing guy, and I thought it was a pretty good comparison, is he said he's like Calvin Brock. Now, if anybody remembers Calvin Brock, that was a pretty good comparison. But yeah, right. And Joyce is just he clubs. He's not exactly a hard puncher. He clubs you, but he's obviously got a great chin. Which, man, I always thought that if I started boxing and I got knocked down right away, I go, well, that's definitely a big disadvantage to have a bad chin. So, you know, he's got a great chin, but that's a live or die thing too with heavyweights. You don't want to get hit like that over and over. And he got hit with some sucker punches. I'll say that. I hate to be such a critic on Joe Joyce because he's a great guy. Paints. I mean, here I go again. See, I hate being such a critic, but that's our job, right, Frank? So we have to be a little bit critical. But he just got hit with right hand after right hand after right hand, and his hands are down. And I'm like, Joe, you know, you don't have to prove that you got such a good jaw. And even Frank Warren was like, well, I didn't like how he kept, you know, the promoter, how he kept getting hit with right hands. But he won. Again, like I said a few seconds ago, I wasn't impressed. I just think that Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua would beat him unless he just outlasts them, especially Joshua, who we know is the opposite in a sense of Joyce, where he's susceptible, especially later in a fight, like after 5 rounds or round 5. You start to wonder right around there. I think it was round 4 with Andy Ruiz. He gets clipped. Something can happen with him. So if you can withstand it, you got a shot, right? Even Carlos Takam, who he fought, had him in trouble later in that fight. So it's not like Takam was just not very good. So he's always going to be, to me, at least at this point, Frank, a mixed bag. The best I can say.
Well, it brought to mind, this is where I was thinking of off the air. It brought to mind guys that we've seen fight that have a chin and not much else, or a lot and no chin. And I think you need to have some whiskers in order to get through. And for some reason, I remember, and I'm remembering a red dyed hair, cigarette smoking. Was that Ricardo Mayorga?
Yes.
Yes.
What a character.
Was, hitting himself between rounds, in between cigarette breaks, like, whoa. So, and we mentioned Tex Cobb. We mentioned guys that you're not going to knock this guy out, but he's not going to do damage to you, or is he? And there is the question. And we, that was when we watched, movies from the 30s, whatever. Oh, he's got a good chin. You just throw him out there and see if you can last. See if you can last, kid. And that was, the Rocky thing. You kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. You hit him with everything you had, and he's kept coming at you. Is that necessarily a good thing? Because we've seen people that was their career. Or is that, you might want to develop some defense and some offense to go with it, because your career is going to be shortened. There's a question coming here at some point.
Yeah.
Who have you seen
that
you said, wow, you're not going to knock him out. You're not going to hurt him, no matter what. You may beat him, you may outpoint him, but you're not going to hurt him.
Cast iron chin, huh? Well, you see, the thing is that it's a good point, because earlier in the careers, and of course, me, I'm trying to think of somebody new, but it escapes me like it always does. But earlier in their career, they have the cast iron chin, but then even as they go on, the chin finally starts to, he just can't take the punishment. Even, see, here I go, even Raging Bull himself got knocked down finally late in his career by a light heavyweight, but not that his chin was getting weaker, but you just can't take all that punishment and keep going until it's going to happen. And he had a pretty long career, so he's not a very good example. But yeah, guys you're right. The funny thing is guys that usually have really good chins are really, really good fighters. It's like their talent is they can take it. The guy that had a great chin, and even though he got knocked down a few times, of course, is our favorite guy, Muhammad Ali. He had a great chin. He did. And I think, see, here we go with the heavyweights. I think George Foreman had a really good chin. Even though he went down against Ron Lyle, he got up, and it's not always that just because you get knocked down, but your resiliency, right? You recover so quickly, and he did. Again, I'm trying to think of, I should have brought up the list of fighters. I think Canelo has a good chin, Frank. I do. I don't think he's been knocked down. Golovkin has never been down, amateurs or professionals. 440 fights. He's never been down in his career. Carlos Monzon. See, now it's coming back to me. He had a great chin. But these are also guys who had a lot of talent. The guys that pop into my head who had good chins, but not a lot of talent. It's the white heavyweight, I guess, Scott Ledoux from Minnesota. Here we go back again.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Right? He's another one who had a hell of a chin. Randy Newman from New York City, who became an official. Not a lot of talent. Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne bleeder. He had a great chin. I think he was never knocked out by all the guys he fought. Oh, he was stopped and he was hurt and he was exhausted, but it was a bloodbath. I mean, he was bleeding even before he got in the ring. Right. So it seems to be, and I know there's more because I'm going through, my brain's going through these names as I'm talking, but the guys that, and then the polar opposite, now I'm jumping all over the place, but the guy that pops in my head is the opposite, who had the talent, but didn't have the chin to withstand punishment way back, a guy by the name of Dwayne Bobbitt. He had some real, right? He had some ability. When he got clipped and he was like Joyce, overhand right.
Never saw it coming, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ken Norton did that to him. I'll never forget. He got knocked out a number of times just because he couldn't take the heavyweight punishment. So it is rarely do you get a guy that's got the great chin and the talent. And I guess most of the time, if you get that, then you have to say, okay, this guy is just an incredible fighter. And it's true. But getting, because in any sport, Frank, we all have our weaknesses, our strengths. So rarely is a guy blessed with in baseball, a guy might be a great hitter, but he's just an okay fielder.
Right.
So in this case, being both, I mean, Tommy Hearns, oh my God, he knocked you out, but he could get knocked out. Not a lot, but he was human, right?
Right.
Roberto Duran had a great chin. Well, Hearns kind of dented that chin, but he had no business even being in there with Thomas Hearns. He was so much smaller, but that never happened to him again. So it does happen, but yeah, I would love to think I have a great chin. It's just like, real quick, it's just like a guy who doesn't have a lot of power in boxing is the guy that I really respect. Because, you're hitting a guy with your Sunday best and he's just looking at you like, is that it? And a lot of times they're saying that and they feel it, but a guy like my paisan, Paulie Malignaggi, they meant it when they said, is that it?
Yeah, well, okay. But I hit you with enough. Right. Yeah.
He had a very good chin. Paulie had a very good chin. And, of course, Rocky Marciano had a fabulous chin.
So I put it in the context of some of the fights we've seen where we've just seen, what did we just see? Someone should have been down and out from this fight. And I go to Castillo Corrales. And
oh, yeah.
It's like these guys are just, and eventually something happens, but it has to, it should have happened 3 rounds before that, or it should have happened, wow, how did they, you mentioned Hagler and Hearns, okay, some of the bombs they were getting hit with in the first round or 2, now granted, only went 3, but you're like, what in the heck am I seeing here?
Hagler, Hagler had a great chin, never down. Yeah. Well, down once, but not really.
Not really, right. And you go, oh my heavens, what am I watching here? And you start to see, and this is what we were talking about off the air, that you can only take from a good fighter so much punishment. You just can't walk in and go, hit me. You can't take, the scene from Raging Bull, go ahead, Ray. You can't knock me down, Ray. Like, come on. That doesn't happen in real life. It may have happened then, but as you said, it caught up to him. So I think that at some point you have to have some offense. But again, Dwayne Bobick, that is a perfect example because that was the next guy. And as we're watching him on Wild World of Sports and all that, this is the guy they're saying is the next guy. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, never mind. It's hard to overcome. And then you have somebody like, Jerry Quarry, who I think had a pretty good chin, but who was just stuck in that, if you take so much punishment, it doesn't matter how good your chin is. And so, and again, this is the thing I see with Joe Joyce. We're going, we're giving this guy a little bit. For me, there's a magic number of when we start giving guys respect. And I don't know that it still exists to that point. But when you say 13-0, I'm like, okay, who have you possibly fought at 13-0? What is your accumulation of great fights, of great fighters that you fought? Not to say that he can't be a great fighter, but that magic number is usually 20. When you get to the 20th fight, now you tell me you're a contender. Not to say you can't be a contender after 9, but when you've been through, as you said, you fought the guy that can box, you fought the guy that can punch, fought the guy with the chin, you fought all comers, and now I know what you can do. I'm not sure what you can do after 13 fights. We fall in love with guys so quickly now, and they have fewer amateur fights as well. So I'm not really sure what we can say about some of these guys, but that's what's out there. So we have to make adjustments, I guess, on what we see and what we feel. But sometimes we get to, he's got this, he's got that. You got to prove it. You got to prove it to me for a little bit. So this is the, this guy didn't look so good in his last fight. Yeah, he was due. He ran up against something different. So we get to that, and I know I'm jumping all over the place, like we said, but we get to that stuff where we say we're getting ahead of ourselves sometimes, but we have to because it's sped up. The process is sped up. So, and I'm going to try and wheel this into a question some kind of way. When we look at that, come up with a couple of guys, and we're going back in history again, a couple of guys, just off the top of your head, that we said, this guy's the next great thing. And then he wasn't. And I used Dwayne Bobbitt for that because he was touted as the next great thing. And I don't think anyone that saw his first few fights would disagree with that. And then you go, whoops, maybe not.
Well, the most obvious example, too bad Charles isn't here because he could grin, is Mike Tyson. I mean, for a while, Mike Tyson was invincible. There was no way anyone was going to beat him. That would ever happen. And his daddy from another mama or whatever, wherever I'm going with this, forget this. Sonny Liston was considered extremely invincible for a while. He was intimidating. He knocked out Floyd Patterson twice. There was no chance that Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay could beat him, blah, blah, blah. And then years later, you have Tyson. He's invincible. And he looked invincible. He did. I mean, he was knocking guys out. He was knocking guys out before he even got in the ring with them. I mean, he was so scary. I used to think, God, I would be scared too if I was fighting him. He's staring at me like that, So when he got beat, that's why it was so shocking. And then you realize, well, he's not as great as we thought. Obviously, right? I mean, and then going way back to a guy that we thought was invincible, or you and me, we weren't there, but it's Joe Louis, who we've discussed a lot. Right. He wasn't supposed to get knocked out by Max Schmeling. No way. It was a joke fight. Louis thought so too. He barely even trained. So that's the thing. That's that human part of it. And then it depends on who you're facing. More recently, a guy that popped into my head, and he's fighting this guy again. For whatever reason, I never can remember his name. Is Warrington is fighting the Mexican fighter who knocked him out brutally. They're fighting in a couple of months, Frank. Again.
Right. Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, we didn't think Warrington was invincible, but he had never lost. And he had beat some pretty good guys. He beat Carl Frampton. Now, Frampton might have been a little past it, but still, he shocked Frampton. He said later, he goes, man, I didn't think he was that good. I remember thinking, neither did I there, Carl. So, you just don't know. And I'm trying to think if there's one more that pops into my head that I thought was invincible. Well, again, Tommy Hearns, and this is just an individual fight. Tommy Hearns fought the Blade. I ran Barkley. You thought, no way in the world Iran Barkley's going to beat Tommy Hearns. Not that he's invincible. He got beat, but he's too much talent. He's blah, 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 dot, dot, dot. This kind of fits in what we were talking before. Well, he was beating the you-know-what out of Iran Barkley, and then Barkley caught him. And down he went. And he barely could get up, and it was over. So those things happen. And one more part, your guy that you've talked about a lot of times, Paul Williams. He was thought of as not totally invincible, but he was tall and skinny, and he had reach, and he could punch, and he was destroying guys. Remember when I first heard about him, I'm like, God, he looks like a praying mantis. He's so skinny and everything, and he's got power like a Tommy Hearns. And things happen, and then he got right.
That was the one I was going to say. Yeah.
Oh, Williams, yeah, exactly. Sergio Martinez. Oh.
And then 6 months later, we'd never hear from Paul Williams again.
Yeah, the accident, right? He's paralyzed. Yeah, terrible.
Yeah. And it's just,
so yeah, there's quite a few of examples.
Well, yeah. I go with, that was going to be one of them, obviously. I remember when we first, and we did it on the show, Juan Diaz.
Oh yeah, you guys like Juan Diaz, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this. I mean, you'd watch a fight and you think there's nothing special about him, and that's what's special about him. If he's doing this to everybody that he's faced so far, he can do it to anybody. There's nothing about him. You're not going to get him to speed up, slow down. You're not going to get him to work too hard, There's just this guy is so contained in what he does that you're starting to believe. It doesn't matter who he faces. He's going to be able to Juan Diaz this guy. And then, Marquez said, no, I don't think so. Mildred Taylor was another one. He said, this guy's got all the tools that you need. He's fast. He can punch. He can defend. He's athletic. What else do you need? And then it just kind of, you're like, really? This is one of the best guys I've seen. Another one that just I thought would just skate through his career, and he probably did, but you get that back half and you gotta ignore that. Roy Jones Jr. I didn't see anybody beat Roy Jones. I don't know how you could have. There was just nothing.
Not for a while.
Done with him. First of all, you have to get in the ring with him, but you can't hit him and you can't stop being hit by him. Those are two pretty good things that are going to, get you in good stead for quite some time. When you can hit anybody well and you can avoid any punch that's coming, I don't know what do you do, but age caught up with him and other things as well, I guess. Oh, okay, and I'll go play a basketball game before really? Okay. And he got away with it. So there was one that went, wow, that guy is just insanely good. And, and I think if we look at the career that he had and maybe the career he should have stopped at having.
Yes.
We still say that.
And if he had stopped, yes.
I agree with Mike Tyson. I grew up in the Mike Tyson era. Mike Tyson, I think, and I are a few months the same age, basically. And what? I mean, he's making grown men, like you said, he's making grown men cry before the fight. You'd see the look on these guys, especially once he became champ. You're going, and guys are like, can I get the check now? Yeah. I want to remember what these numbers are, because I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to spend this in another hour, And, the fight would start, grab him, hold him, don't let him, like, you haven't even thrown a punch yet. I'm not going to let him throw a punch because he's going to scramble my brains in about 5 minutes. And, I didn't get, that I missed him. That's it. So there was one where I thought, there's just no way,
Right.
It's not possible. Yeah, I agree with Sonny Liston. I've gone back and I've looked at the buildup to all of that, to the Cassius Clay fight and everything, because we know him, at least I know him as Muhammad Ali after the fact. And it's hard to understand that until you read the articles and you see what's going on, just how many people really didn't think he had a chance. Not just in that fight, but in any fights other than that as well. It's like, how do you not believe this guy is as good as he became when you saw him? Well, in the Olympics, he just, okay. And you follow along and you go, no one thought he was going to be good. Like, we gave him the shot because, well, he's undefeated and he's on the path, but that'll shut him up. That's enough. So there are a few that you say, man, I think Roberto Graham was one of those that I thought, when he comes up and he starts beating people and wow, he's just walking through, he had a presence that he was not going to be beat. Whatever he did was going to work. Wow. And then one of those guys I think maybe moved up in weight further than he probably needed to. And well, I shouldn't say needed because he had to. But if he could have stayed in the lightweight realm in the 130, 135 area, if he could have stayed there, I don't think that there would have been anybody to touch it. But once he starts fighting at middleweight, that's a whole other story. And you get some of those guys that I won't say ate their way out of their weight class, but matured their way out of their weight class. Wow, how did that happen? But it was always fun to see these guys that were just. Paul Williams was one to me. It's like, and maybe it's the way they mashed him up. It's like, this guy is just insane. He's throwing thousands of punches around or whatever it was. I mean, it was insane what he, and he's working on the inside when he doesn't need to. Wow. He did everything that you would ask a fighter to do until he got to the point where someone went, no. Donald Curry.
Yeah, that's a great example. He looked like someone that no one could beat for a while. Yeah, until he ran into Hunnigan.
Well, well, I mean, because you didn't give him a chance against Sugar Ray because he was too young and didn't know. And he walked into that ring like, I don't know who this old guy is, but I'm Donald Curry, and this is over. I mean, that was a dominant performance. Like, wow, okay. And from there on, for the next 3, 4, 5 fights, I'm like, this guy is the next great thing. It's wow. It's like Mantle taking over for DiMaggio. Okay, I'm the next great guy. Forget about the other guy that was a superstar, that was all of Fame. I'm the next guy. And then, done.
Oh, yeah. You made me real quick think of 2 other guys that not exactly the same, but Terry Norris there for a while was thought of as a guy that nobody was he had everything. He could punch. He beat Sugar Ray Leonard. He had it. And then we found out his chin was very suspect. We thought he was. And before he ran into Hagler and Terry Norris, the Beast, Mugabe, was thought as somebody that nobody could beat, right? And I mean, I used to watch. I mean, God, he was blitzing guys really fast, and he just, we do. What you said 5 minutes ago or so was right. We tend to put these guys up on these pedestals too fast, and remember that each fight is different and each opponent is different, and you're usually going to have your Waterloo moment with someone in your career as a boxer. There's going to be someone who's going to be like, no, I'm not scared of you, like Buster Douglas. Your talent is good, but I got answers. So it's like that. It's a one-on-one sport. So there's going to be a guy. One of these days, you're going to run into a guy, and suddenly what was working before is not working. And obviously that happened to Paul Williams too.
Yeah, I didn't believe initially in Lomachenko.
I was going to mention him. Yeah, Lomachenko, of course.
And they were like, no, okay, it's too much hype. And then when I sat down and watched his fights, I went, yeah, this guy is the deal. He's the real stuff. I mean, he's throwing from angles, and he's quicker. And because you hear about, the quirky training stuff and all that, right, it's kind of gimmicky, but it worked. And then he's losing this fight, and let's face it, he was losing it badly. Whoa, wait, what? And of course, you have excuses afterwards and all that on both sides. I get that, and maybe they're true, maybe they're not, but you still didn't look good. And whatever you decided to do at the second half of the fight, if you just would have done it the first half of the fight, we would still wouldn't be having this conversation now. So so that's the thing that always bothers me about I had a torn labrum and went to fight the fight for. Or why didn't you tell us before the fight? Don't tell us after the fight when it's an excuse. By the way, would you told us if you would have won? Probably not. So, right. Loma was one that you go, man, I tell you, this guy is wow. Antonio Tarver. Because you beat Roy Jones. What?
Knocked him out.
Roy Jones. So, so wait a second. That was the guy we weren't supposed to be able to stop. And Jermaine Taylor kind of goes in the same thing. It's like, you're just walking through everybody, and now you're the champ. This Kelly Pavlik guy is no problem for you at all. Oops, maybe it wasn't. So
that happens a lot.
Styles make fights, fighters make, but we get enamored with what we see, and it's kind of hard to make that judgment because as we were going, we'll make this go full circle some kind of way. If you haven't been hit by somebody that can really slug, you've got a great chin until it's been tested. If once you've been tested, this guy can really punch. Yeah, maybe my chin's not as great as I thought it was. So, and the opposite end of that story is the guy that became, oh my goodness, after years of being, I didn't hear it. Sergio Martinez, we mentioned him earlier. Where did that guy come from?
That's a great example.
All of a sudden, he looks unbeatable when I didn't even know who he was for the first decade of his career. And he put together a string of 4 or 5 fights. It's like, this guy is phenomenal. And I wonder where that comes from. I wonder where you find that, whatever it is. And some people say you found it in a vial or in a syringe or something like that. I'm not going to go with that. But it's the idea of you know, when you turn the light bulb on, suddenly there you are.
Yeah, and later in your career, which was pretty impressive. And you made me think, and see, there I go back to the LA time, and following that period so much when I was younger. Carlos Palomino was not thought of anybody other than that he was a good fighter, and that he didn't look like championship material when he was younger. I mean, he lost the fight, and he had a draw with Zovic Barajas, who was very underrated, but he didn't look like somebody that was going to be a champion. And hell, when he went to London, the fight John Tracy, I mean, he was the underdog. And then when he went, this is what happens in boxing, which is interesting too. And this is something we could talk to Charles about. Is I've noticed a lot of times that when guys win titles, suddenly they're better than they were before. They were good, but Carlos won that title, and it was like, boom. It all came out after that. I mean, he held that title for 3.5 years. That fight with Benitez was very close, very debatable whether he lost it, whatever. But right, and Benitez is a hell of a fighter. So, and he's fighting in Benitez's backyard. So that tells you something. But he was underrated. I think part of it, maybe it was Sergio Martinez. I don't remember if he was underrated, but Carlos Palomino was definitely underrated. And he just quietly got better. You're talking about how's it happen? Some guys just have a later peak, a later prime, maybe. And Carlos found his right at the right time. And then it was just gravy, you know, for the next 3.5 years. Or then on the other flip side is some guys have a peak and they stay right there. We were talking about Charlo last week, remember? And I said I thought he was quite a bit above these guys, when in reality it's pretty close as far as talent. So again, it's us. We want to brand these guys with whatever. A lot of times we can't see. We don't have a crystal ball in front of us. So we go, oh, he's only okay. He's pretty good. And then a year later we're going, damn, this guy's a hell of a lot better. So it's just people, I guess, and hard work maybe. But if you ask Carlos, he'll just say, I just was grinding, and it all happened. So and I think that happens in sports. You know, something like, here we go, one real quick, Frank. You'll see a guy who's an average baseball player or whatever, and suddenly he has like 2 or 3 great years. You'll go, what happened? And then you'll find out, well, he worked really hard and whatever, and he found himself. So sports, that's what makes sports so fascinating. Football, that happens in football too. Guys average, and then suddenly he's really good, you know, wide receiver, whatever. Most of the time it's hard work. I really believe that we have a peak, and it's not all of us have peaks. You know, it might be 21, it might be, I don't know how old Sergio was. Why am I thinking that he was he in his 30s when a lot of this started? I
want to say he was 34, 35 when that hit. Yeah.
Right, and there were all the talk about the needles. I know all of it, and then he had all those injuries later that just played into the whole needle talk. But he just got you talk about whatever it was. I'm not even going to go there because we have no proof, and we shouldn't be throwing accusations at someone with no proof. His talent level just was here, and then it just went. I mean, and he was fun to watch. He was in some great fights. So, yeah, that just happens sometimes, and you really can't explain it the way that we would probably prefer.
Well, I go baseball, and I go to that year that Brady Anderson hit 50 homers. Like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, he didn't do it again either. That was a one year.
Do it again? Yeah, but you're like, I mean, he was a solid player.
Yes.
Up until then, and he was a solid player after that. You're like, where the hell did that come from?
It just, yeah.
You watch him play like, this guy's just knocking dingers left and right. What the hell's going on here? So it does happen, you know, and it's weird. The year that Corey Dillon had after he left the Bengals and went to the Patriots, this guy's washed up.
Well, and remember Dale Murphy? And he was real solid for a number of years, and then suddenly he lost it. He couldn't hit fastball no more.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy moly, what happened?
Yeah, that was, you know, MVP.
Yes.
DNP. You're like, what the, yeah. That because there's one of those guys who go, Hall of Fame worthy? How many guys have multiple MVP years that aren't Hall of Fame worthy? Or not even in the mix, other than the quote unquote guys, you know? But yeah, that's one of them where he just disappeared.
I felt bad for him.
He was still there. Yeah. And that's another great guy. It's another great,
yes, great guy,
great
right?
Story that just didn't go right. But
I guess he had that peak, and that was it.
Yeah. A couple of guys going back. You said Wilfred Benitez. There's another one that you went, okay, he beat the guy, and he's going to be the guy. He beat the guy when he was like 12. He's going to
17. Yeah, he was 17.
Yeah. And like this guy's going to be on top of the world for a while, and it's not like he didn't look good up until then. And then Sugar Ray comes along, like, no, this is the test that Sugar Ray doesn't pass. That was my first thing. This is the test Sugar Ray doesn't pass. And then also Alexis Arguello. You're not beating this guy. No one else has. Aaron Pryor, who are you? And
that's a good example.
And Aaron, and this is okay. This is the thing that I think is really cool. And you mentioned Buster Douglas, who didn't know any better, or just at that particular time didn't care. But when you get in the ring with a guy that you're not supposed to beat, that no one else, and going back to the Cassius Clay thing, no one thinks you have a chance. You really shouldn't even be in a competition here. And you walk in the ring and go, I got this. To me, of a lot of them, I think the two an out of body, out of mind experience. Not to take anything away from what he did. It was a great, don't get me wrong. But and also, as we mentioned, I don't think Tyson cared for it. A lot of the stars had to align a lot of ways for that.
Yes.
But I think when you look at Cassius Clay in the first fight with Liston, and then Aaron Pryor walking in to say, I don't know who Alexis Arguello is and I don't care. And just taking it to him. I think those are two of the of a lot of fights. You go, wow. When Hagler made the European tour of Anna Firmo and Minter and all those guys, like, I don't care who you guys think you are. They call me marvelous for a reason, So, that I don't care if I'm the underdog. I don't care if I'm the favorite. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm going in and take care of business. And that's an interesting thing. Go ahead. That's an interesting thing.
Just going to say real fast. One that popped in my head is people forget this now, going back, of course, because we do. Joe Frazier was a big favorite to beat George Foreman. I mean, a lot of people thought there's no way that big lumbering mummy is going to beat Joe Frazier, not smoking Joe Frazier, not the guy that beat Muhammad Ali. He'd beat Joe Frazier 7 days out of 7, most likely. It was just, there it is. Right. But there's an example. You just don't know. And then, of course, Foreman loses to Ali, and that was another. He was, by that time that he fought Ali, he was thought of as invincible, knocking out Ken Norton in 2 rounds. No one's going to beat this guy. See, there you go.
Yeah. I didn't think that Calzaghe could beat Roy Jones. I didn't think that was at all possible. Now, that's a whole nother kettle of fish to get into, but that's prime against not prime, but even not prime Roy Jones should beat this guy. Because I'd seen enough Calzaghe fights to think, no, I mean, he's beating the guys he's beating. And he's looking good doing it, but when he fights somebody that can really bring it to him, ain't gonna happen. And wow, that was impressive on the end of Calzaghe. I thought that was any number of Bernard Hopkins fights. Well, no, come on, you're not that good. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is maybe just I mean, what can you say that Bernard Hopkins brought to the table?
He had a lot of guile. Right? A lot of wisdom, experience. I mean, he shocked me a few times, and these are totally different times in his career, maybe even more than a couple times. He shocked me when he knocked out or stopped Trinidad. I was like, right. And years later, when he's what, 46 or 7, I'm not even sure, when he fought Jean Pascal,
right?
And knocked him down and beat him. I was. He's amazing.
I'm watching that going.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just
shocked.
Yeah. He was. And he wasn't a big puncher. You know, we called him an executioner when he was younger, right? But he wasn't. It didn't mean that. He didn't have a big punch, but he was just very gutsy and very smart in there, and belief. I think it was a lot of it was belief. And then finally it got caught up with him when he was like 50, but and then against Kovalev. I mean, I thought he had a chance against Kovalev just because he was Bernard Hopkins. You know, he had turned into that Muhammad Ali thing that no matter what, you thought Ali would find a way to win. And Kovalev beat the you-know-what out of him, and that showed you that, well, a lot of it depends on the opponent. But still, what he was doing, incredible.
Yeah, and this is where we get to where, you know, Pacquiao versus Spence is.
Yeah, coming up.
In our heads, we know that Errol Spence Jr. should win this fight.
Yes.
I don't know that anyone that knows anything about boxing is going to say Errol Spence Jr. should not win this fight. In their head,
he should win.
There's something over here telling me, but it's Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
There's something over here saying, you know, if I'm at the betting window, I'm not entirely sure what the hell to do here.
Yeah.
There's something telling me that it's a possibility that Pacquiao figures this out. I don't know why. There's no reason to do that, but he's proven it to me so many times that it's a possibility.
It is.
And like I said, Ali, I thought Ali might beat Holmes. I really did.
Yeah, there you go. See?
I don't know why, but
because he was Ali.
Yeah, right. He's come out of the. He's the miracle worker.
He looked great.
Yeah. And oops.
Yeah, and Pacquiao is looking real sharp and solid. No, it just depends. I mean, it feels a little deja vu to me. And the last time I felt these feelings was when even though we kept saying on this show, Thurman's going to win. I remember thinking to myself, he's going to win, but I'm really starting to wonder here. Is he? Then when he got knocked out in the first round, I'm like, so I'm starting to get that feeling again, like, if Pacquiao can do certain things, he's going to win. And that'll be amazing. I mean, it'll be amazing. But that's a tall mountain to climb to beat Errol Spence Jr. He's stronger than Keith Thurman, you know, but he's a lot slower, Frank. So that might be the speed kills, you know. That's going to be the key for Pacquiao, I think, is speed.
Well, when it was at Margarito, like, there's no, I'm sorry. You can, because Margarito was fighting pretty well at that point.
He was.
And you're thinking, you know, he's a half a foot taller.
Yeah.
By fight time, he's going to outweigh him by 30 pounds. You know, and he's been looking pretty good, Margarito.
Yeah, he was.
I'm not sure what Pacquiao can do to make this happen because he's got a lot to overcome. And by round 3, I'm like, Margarito, just quit. You don't have a chance. You literally do not have a chance to win this fight.
Speed.
The only thing you can do, only thing you can do is knock him out, but you can't find him to hit him.
Yeah.
And you keep getting, you know, every time it looks like you're going to go, you get hit 4 times.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
There is no way you have a shot in this. So I don't know. And again, as we try and segue to fill up the time here, not really fill up the time, but to go to something else, those are the things that there's that moment where what you thought was going to happen is not going to happen, or vice versa. And okay, there is the Ali turn, you know, the rope-a-dope. Like, what's he? Oh, he knows better than I do. Oops, something's different here. It's something you're familiar with. There was a point in the second Gotti Ward fight. It's like, this is now, it carried over to the third one. Like, Mickey's going to keep going, but Arturo's figured this out. He knows what he has to do. And he is at this class that Mickey Ward on his best day won't be at. Because when it was a brawl, Mickey's there. When Gotti turned it into a boxing match, it was a completely different thing. And Mickey couldn't get it back to a brawl. And Gotti refused to go to a brawl, which also I didn't think was going to happen, having watched Gotti for the last, couple of fights before that. Like, wow. He figured it out. So
McGirt, it was Buddy McGirt helped him, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so come up with a couple other ones. And this is the theme of the show. Make shit up as we go. But a couple other times where you could see it spin. Where it just was, the guy went, click, light bulb came on.
Tommy Hearns and Leonard won. The idea was that Tommy Hearns was going to try to knock out Sugar Ray Leonard, and then whatever, he started to box around round 6 or round 5. Maybe it was early, around 4 or 5. And he was dominating Sugar Ray Leonard. Yeah. You did not dominate Sugar Ray Leonard. And we had, right? We had forgotten. I mean, this guy's the Motor City Cobra. This guy's the hitman. He's the power guy. Yeah. We'd forgotten that this man was we've talked about this a long time ago, but people forget. This guy's a hell of a boxer.
Yes.
A boxer, and Sugar Ray obviously could punch, but he was thought of as a boxer puncher more than a puncher boxer. At least that's the way I thought of him. So he's met his match here. He can't, the long Paul Williams like Tommy Hearns moving around the ring, sliding left, sliding right, sticking that jab in his face, his eyes getting all swelled up. That was a flip of the script that I don't think anybody saw coming, especially Sugar Ray Leonard.
Right.
So then Hearns again, in a sense, I thought he was going to try to box Marvin Hagler in that fight, and he comes out bombing. And he's right. He said later that it was because he didn't feel like he could go a lot of rounds. He said later, so he thought he'd just go for it. And oh my God, and that's why Hagler always respected him, because he said he went right with me. He went toe to toe. Yeah, I won, but I respect a man that do that. Meaning it was a kind of slap at Sugar Ray Leonard, they fought. But that was a little flip of the script where I went, oh man, I just didn't see it. And we've seen cases of that where guys have plan Bs where it's not working, and they got a plan in their brain. A guy that never had a plan B, in my opinion, was Amir Khan. He wasn't sure if he was a slugger or a boxer. And then if one thing wasn't working, he couldn't really change it in midstream. He did hang on against Maidana, if you remember. He had Maidana done, and he had to hang on, and he had to run around the ring. It wasn't a natural thing. It wasn't, he was told to do it. There are some fighters that seem to instinctively know, okay, this isn't, Muhammad Ali being one of them, of course, this isn't working. So I got to try it. And and somebody just popped in my head, and again, his trainer helped him, Frank, and it's again Buddy McGirt. Tells you what a great, God, I'd love to have him on the show, Frank. You'd love him.
Yeah.
Kovalev, later in his career, Kovalev started moving around more, and people were like,
yeah, right.
And Buddy McGirt's like, people don't realize this guy can box. And he got against Alvarez, he won the title back, before what happened. He won his next fight against Yarde, and then he lost to Canelo. But he was moving around, and he was actually very competitive against Canelo, even though he's past his prime and everything. But the point is, he showed another dimension of himself that you would have thought when he was destroying everybody. He's another guy that was considered invincible for a while. I mean, he was just, he'd already killed somebody, and we thought he was going to kill somebody else the way he was going. But again, it's like you can't, like you said before we even started, you can't judge a book by its cover. Sometimes you can't look at a guy and go, okay, that's all he can do. Like Gotti again. Everyone thought Gotti was a slugger. Here comes Buddy McGirt, and McGirt says, I want to extend your career a little bit, man. He says, you're a hell of an athlete. You can move. You can do all that, because he did that sometimes earlier in his career. But anyway, what happened to that? Well, I like to give the crowd a thrill. And McGirt said, F the crowd. You know, we gotta come up with something else here.
Win the damn fight, yeah.
Win the fight. So yeah, that's what makes it interesting about some guys have more than we think. You know, when they start, they show a dimension to themselves that I mean, even if Charles was here, he'd be talking about that crafty Floyd. As Floyd, you know, Floyd changed his career because he was the pretty boy earlier, but he was knocking guys out like Gotti. Remember, he was taking more chances when he was younger. The time that he allegedly lost, even though officially he didn't, against Castillo, our friend Anthony just told me that. Well, Mayweather did lose once to. He changed his style later. Yeah, changed his style later in his career, where he became really the boxer. But then again, every now and then he changed up against Maidana in the first fight. He went toe to toe, and it was a hell of a fight. And I remember thinking, and I've said this before, I remember thinking, Frank, that he won. I was there. Frank, too bad Charles was probably there too. I wish I had known that. But I remember thinking, well, yeah, he didn't win as convincingly as normal. That's because he didn't fight his fight. And he said that. He goes, yeah, I'll fight him again, but this time I'll fight my fight. And he dominated him.
Right.
So that tells you how great he was. But you just never know. And then when Charles likes to talk about when Sugar Shane staggered him, you know, that was, and then he changed a little bit, changed stuff. Yeah, he did a little tweak. And that, I think that tells you more about what a fighter is as far as what he brings. And that we don't know that until they get into the situation. That's why a lot of guys like to say, I want to get him, take him to the deep waters, try to drown him.
Right.
A lot of times you end up getting drowned because this other guy's got a plan B that you never saw coming.
Well, and Sugar Shane Moses is another one of those guys that we thought wasn't going to get beat by anybody.
Yes, that's true.
Like, what are you going to do with him?
Nobody can beat this guy. No, he's too good.
The fight that looked and we did it on the show, was Durant against Iran Barkley. You know, this is just, he gradually got into the fight, and the more he got into the fight, the more you could see Iran Barkley go, what in the hell's going on here?
Yeah. And no answers.
It was like this old little dude,
little guy
beating him. And it's like, it went from, I'm supremely confident to I'm not sure what the heck's going on here.
Yeah.
And Durant gained belief as he went too.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I'm the young me again. Is this Ken Buchanan in front of me? I'm gonna kick his butt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's just odd the way that works out. And I think is it because it's a mano-a-mano, one-on-one sport, and you're not drawing from, well, this guy made the right pitch or this guy made the right block, and then now it's like, I deflected that. I did this. I made this happen. And I've seen everything he has, and now I know I can do this. Plus, you know how you feel at that particular time. And to me, that's the Buster Douglas story was, you know, again, all that happened and everything, but he felt right that fight. And he went in with, you know, I believe he said, well, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to go out and do what I have to do. And by the way, it's working.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm trying to do is working.
Yes.
And I go to Aaron Pryor over Alexis Arguello. I don't really care if it looks weird or if it's not it's working. And this guy who was the classic style boxer, the guy that everyone wants to emulate, isn't ready for this.
Yeah.
It's working. So I'm going to keep doing it. And the more that happened, Arguello's like, he's supposed to be right there when I throw that punch. He's supposed to throw that punch from here. I should block it. Where did that punch come from?
Yeah.
What the heck just happened?
Angles.
So those are the interesting things. It's and we've talked about writing and all this stuff before. And for you that think that we're going crazy here, look it up. Don't trust us. But when you talk about somebody like E.E. Cummings, and you know the rules of what you're supposed to do,
yeah,
and then you don't do that and it works, but you got to know the rules first.
Yep.
And you go, you know what? I'm going to write this with no punctuation, no capital letters. Well, that doesn't work. But if you know where they're supposed to be, then you know where to take them out.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you know the right angles, you can throw from the wrong angles. This is, I think, the beauty of Pacquiao, to bring this full circle. He knows what you're expecting him to do because he's ready for that. But he's taken what, Freddie Roach and others have said, now let's do this way. Let's turn it a quarter turn that way. Let's just make, and Lomachenko the same way. We know what's supposed to happen. So we know what you're going to do. So then we know what you're expecting. And I'll leave again. If I know what you're looking for, this a little bit different, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. So to me, and you know what? That was a perfect segue because we're going to find out about Errol Spence. Excellent job as usual on your part, because Errol Spence, now he did box a little against Danny Garcia, which surprised a lot of people. So he's going to be thinking, how do I stay with this guy? And he's going to be throwing his long jab at this darting, here I am. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to have to up his game in a way to deal with the speed. So will Errol Spence have a plan B? And he will, because Derek James, his trainer, is excellent, right? So you know that they're going to work on options and they're going to work on what they're going to do. They're going to have a for sure plan that they think will corner him, cut off the ring, blah, 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 jab, all that stuff. Watch these things. He does this. But then if it's not working, you know that they're going to have something else they're going to do. They'll just up the ante. But it might end up being a snore fest the first few rounds, because Errol Spence might come out, I'm not going to chase him. I'm going to box him. I got the length. I got the height. Right. I got everything. I'm going to stick my jab in his.
I've got the belts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to stick my jab in his face. See how he deals with that, the little guy. So, that, again, that's what makes boxing so fascinating.
But here's the thing, and this is what's interesting about it. We know that these guys are creatures of habit, right? This is how I train. This is how I spar. This is when I sleep. This is when I eat. All of that. And the pandemic has kind of thrown that into a whole crux of blunderish nonsense, but it's still something you like to do. But how do you spar and prepare for Muhammad Ali? Do you fight a lightweight? Do you spar with a middleweight? Heavyweights don't fight that way. How do you prepare for Aaron Pryor, Lomachenko? The guys don't throw from these angles. I don't know that I ever saw Pryor sit down and throw a punch.
Yeah. It was very awkward.
It worked. Yeah, but it worked.
Oh, yeah.
He had power. He's throwing wrist punches that are hurting people. Like,
yeah.
How do if anyone else does that, you're going, well, just go ahead and throw. I'm not worried about that. Lomachenko, this guy's out, dancing with ping pong balls and stuff. I don't know what he's doing. He's throwing liver shots he's hitting me from behind, Yeah. How do you get to that angle? How do you prepare for that? I don't know how you spar for quick, fast Manny Pacquiao. I don't know.
I would, if you're asking,
I'm going to ignore it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So if you're asking me, I would probably have two different types of guys in camp. I'd have a lighter guy like you're talking about. I'd have like a lightweight or a junior featherweight, really fast. Then I would have another guy around the same weight. But yeah, you got somehow, the thing is you can prepare to a degree, but you're not going to find anyone that's going to bring, because yeah, you bring a 130-pound guy in there. Yeah, he's going to be speedy, but he's not going to hit nearly as hard as Manny Pacquiao does. So you're only going to get a portion of what you're going to be facing. That's why sometimes you'll see a fight and you'll go, the guy's had 2 months to get ready. He gets in the ring with a guy and he looks lost. Because what he was doing sparring was kind of similar, but when then you face the real guy, you're like, oh man, this is totally different than what I expected. So there you go.
And you say, okay, I'm going to prepare for ignoring anything here and worry about stuff that's off to the side. Or am I going to ignore anything out here because I'm not worried about that, and I'm just going to worry about when he's in front of me? Because we've seen Pacquiao do both ways. Before the first Marquez fight and the first Marquez fight, everything was straight left, right down the pipe. then now he's jumping over here.
He's not want to be in that straight line.
He's jumping down there. He's not going to be in one spot. Yeah. So which guy can you prepare for? Because can you prepare for the guy that's over here, then down here, then up?
Not really.
Or do you think those punches aren't going to affect me? So yeah, well, or he's come up with the mindset of those punches aren't the ones that are going to hurt me. He's just scoring with those. When I get in here, boom, I got to get it.
Well, that's what he's going to have. That's what he's going to have to do. That's what he's going to have to do.
Yeah.
We don't know about Errol Spence's chin. See, that's one of the mysteries about his jaw. We don't know. He doesn't get hit very much. That's good. But what happens if Pacquiao hits him with one of those shots? He knocked Keith Thurman down. Yeah, you don't know.
And it's not just the chin. It's where is the repair case?
Well, that's very true.
Are you ready to do that? And we asked that prior to the last Errol Spence fight. Are you prepared, the Garcia fight? Are we prepared for getting hit? How do you simulate that? Because are you laying off of that in sparring? Or are you going, go ahead and hit me a few times and see what it feels like? Is it fully healed or not? I was watching a clip on I'm going to forget Jason Moore. Who's fighting Franco? Jason Moore. Okay.
Yes.
And he's sparring with his brother Andrew, and it's like, go to the body. It's not sparring. It's just his brother's punching him in the body. I'm like, that's how you prepare for this fight? It wasn't like he just hit him 4 or 5 times. It's like 2 minutes of just getting pounded by his brother. So I'm not worried about body punches. So okay, and we'll get into that next week. But that is one of those fights again.
Coming up.
I think I've oversold that fight. I really
not really.
Because I'm just expecting a war. It may not be a long war. I think it's going to be Maloney quickly because he's got a lot to prove to himself. But I also think Franco's got a lot to prove to everybody else.
Oh, yeah. He's the guy now. There's something to really prove.
Right. Yeah. I've been disrespected even though everything came out. Yeah. I don't know. So coming up. Get out on this. We're not sure what's happening with Plant in Canelo. We're hearing negotiations fell apart, but that could be for today. It might be back on tomorrow.
Right.
Who knows? We know that Nonito Donaire isn't fighting right away, and that's already been rescheduled without him. We know that the Fury Wilder is going on in October. I think it's the 9th.
October 9th.
So we're left with all these, what were going to be pretty good. Usyk and Joshua. That's
September.
So
yep.
In the next few weeks, we kind of have a little bit of a, let me see.
Yeah, October 14th is when everything really kicks in again.
Right. So right now we have what?
This weekend, this weekend, just as the zone has Conor Benn is fighting against Granados, who's a tough guy from Chicago, but Conor Benn has looked pretty impressive. So it's kind of a quiet period right now. So it's good that we're doing this, and then we got to wait to talk to Charles about hopefully, since it was ordered, Crawford against his man Sean Porter. As you know, I can see Charles be going like this. So that's good. Terrence Crawford needs that fight for his resume. He does. Sean Porter doesn't seem all that thrilled. I mean, he'll do it because he has to. What choice? Because I guess they're pretty good friends, and they had a little falling out. Now they're good again. But I don't know what you do. That might be a fun one, Frank, to talk about. Two guys that are friends. Put that aside. Now you're going to fight each other. Hopefully. Nothing's official. So
nothing's official, right?
They're dragging their feet. But Bob Arum said he thinks he can make it.
as we're loath to talk about, but we do it all the time anyway. Let's get into the, oh my God, what was that name of that song? The politics of dancing here, the dancing that's going on right now with, and real quick, I mean, we won't spend a lot of time because we're about ready to get out of here, but the idea of we've been matchmaking, and now things are starting to unravel a little bit. Not everything, but a little bit. The Maloney-Franco fight, they could not make. That was one they just had to make. And the other Maloney is fighting on the undercard. They had to make that fight. We're a little surprised it didn't happen in Australia, but it happened. Okay, it's going to happen. Okay. We're still, again, we're looking at the negotiations and who's at fault and who really cares, but the Canelo ruling the roost, I guess. So that seems a little out there. The understanding of why that Fury and Wilder's been postponed, but it has been postponed. And what does that mean for that?
A lot of rumors.
Again, a lot of rumors, right? And so there's a lot of things that are, we got to getting what we wanted, what we talked about for the last year and a half. Matchmakers making matches, putting things together. And now, even though there are extenuating circumstances, does it look like we're getting back to the same old, where it's this guy doesn't want to do this guy can't put this together, and some of it are for reasons that obviously are out of people's control. I get that. But are we in danger of backsliding to this guy doesn't fight for 3 months or 3 years, and this guy doesn't fight this guy, and this guy? It looks like we're getting that, I'm going to run my side of things, you run your side of things, and the two should not mix.
Yeah, we're going to get some good fights, but Floyd Mayweather, remember, said that BBC and his family, we're going to keep it in the family, whatever that means. So does that mean that Gervonta's only going to fight guys in BBC, and that means that he's not going to fight a Josh Taylor, he's not going to fight a Ramirez, he's not going to, and he's not going to fight a Teofimo Lopez someday? I mean, I understand why Floyd would say that, but then again, he also said a year ago that really harms boxing. So you can't have it both ways, Floyd. You can't talk, but he can in a sense. So I think this is just the modern day. We complain about it all the time because we're all old, especially me. But the modern day boxing game is like that. It's a hit and a miss, a semi-pun there, because the hits are we get some of the fights we want. We get Joshua. We were going to get Joshua and Fury, and I think we still will next year as long as they win their next fight. Got Wilder and Fury again. A lot of people didn't like that fight, but that made sense. They fought twice. Once was controversial. Second one, Wilder deserves one more chance, and they had a contract, so shut up about that. Drives me crazy. They had a signed contract done. So we are getting some good ones. Hopefully we get Lomachenko and Lopez again. That one really has me excited. So will we, though? That's the thing. That's the point, Frank. 30, 40 years ago, oh, damn yes, we would have got Lomachenko and Lopez. It would have already been there, already had a date set for the third one. And 40 years before that, hell, they would have been fighting a month after the second one back in those days. So it's just the modern boxing, like anything. The modern basketball is different than I liked it back in the 70s and 80s, a hell of a lot more than I like it now. Football, baseball, everything's different. I like the All-Star game back in the day when they used to wear their real uniforms to the All-Star game. Everything has changed because there's so much money and greed and corporations. And has it hurt all of those sports I just mentioned? Hell yes. So finally answering your question, I think we'll get some. And then will we get Crawford and Spence if Spence beats Pacquiao? He said he wants to fight him. He said the first time in a long time, I still want to fight Crawford. Oh, before you said, I don't even think about him anymore. So
yeah,
it's going to be like that. We're going to be, oh, we got these. And then, oh, what's after that? Well, we got a lull for a while. And then so it's not, so no, I don't think it's ever going to be like it once was, unless you get somebody huge like a Tyson or Muhammad Ali that makes the sport, in a sense, international again. But for right now, this is the best we can do.
Yeah, and you mentioned something perfect. You know, the Olympics started last week or week before last. I'm not really sure which. And and the question is, for most people, is it even on? And I have it on 4 channels. It's on, but it's like, oh. And I remember the Olympics used to be like, oh,
that's a great example.
That was must-see TV.
Oh, it was.
I don't know. Don't really seem to, whatever. It doesn't hold my interest the way it used to. Maybe it's oversaturation. I don't know. But it's well. Okay.
I think so.
So and that's a shame. Yeah, because maybe it's because they're not amateurs. I don't know. But
that's part of it too. I hate that.
And maybe it's because I'm an old.
Yep. That again.
But we're getting to the point where, well, I remember back in my day, back in the hot shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
take your teeth out before you say that, right?
It's great now. Like compared to old farts and go back and say, kids, go Google Wilfred Benitez. Just
that's right.
It'll make you feel good.
You don't know, go Google them.
Yeah, we mentioned a couple of guys in this show that you may not know who they were. Go look them up. You'll go, oh, I know. Yeah. Go look up Donald Curry. Look up Donald Curry and see what we're talking about. Look up Rosside Bramble and
Lone Star Cobra.
We're talking about. Yeah, or Dwayne Bobbitt.
Look up Dwayne Bobbitt. He was the guy for a while.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is the beauty of perspective and the curse of perspective. Is that we have perspective now at this age of understanding how crazy and how hyped we got about people and how much we undervalued some people. Yes, I was on the Mike Tyson. He's going to destroy. If an asteroid was coming, send Mike Tyson. Whatever. Mike Tyson can kill anything. Mike Tyson would have beat this COVID thing by himself. No problem. Mike Tyson was the baddest man there ever was. But was any better than John L. Sullivan? Was he any better than Vladimir Klitschko?
For a while.
What is it? And then they can't be beat. Well, guess what? They can't. And we undersell some people. You don't pay attention to them. I remember the time that was on HBO After Dark that we first got to see Morales and Barrera.
Oh, those were great fights.
But you'd heard about them, but you thought, well, they can't quite possibly live up to this crappy hype over here. They're just trying to get swatch. Ooh. Didn't miss an Eric Morales fight after that. Didn't miss an Eric Morales fight after that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how we can, and the beauty of it now is we can go back and watch it. So, all right. So let's look at our poll question. First of all, actually click on the link and answer the poll. Don't just write stuff in. Though I appreciate the people that have done that. It took me, 18 seconds to create the poll. So actually answer the poll. And also gives us some tracking that way as well. So, but the poll questions were this. Your Mount Rushmore, and I know I cut it out before, your Mount Rushmore for each of these 3 weight classes. So you get pick 4 fighters at welterweight, at middleweight, and at heavyweight. And I won't go into who's winning, who's losing. We'll get into that we'll get into it next week. But the idea of just respond, fill out the little poll thing. We said that there's a link in the description here. Go ahead and send it in, and we'll let you know. It's nice to have other people involved.
It's fun,
what's going on. Yeah, I think it was pretty cool. And people get involved in what's happening. And we've touched on a lot of them right now during this show of guys that we really thought. And again, some of them we didn't, because we were talking about guys that we thought were invincible that weren't invincible. guys that finished their career strong. And it doesn't mean they had to be undefeated. Doesn't mean they had to have won a belt. They could have been the second or third banana in a strong era. You never know. So, guys, and the caveat is they had to actually be alive when you were alive. So, or fighting.
That's right.
Active when you're alive. So you had
your time on this earth. Yes.
You can't
go back to YouTube and look at Joe Louis.
Burt Sugar said this guy was number one. No, it's got to be somebody that you actually
right. Right. It's a good poll.
We will probably. Yeah. We should have Mr. Farmer back next week. He's on sabbatical. He's doing some important stuff. So he's not in Costa Rica saving people, but he's doing some important stuff today. So, anything you'd like to close the show with, Sal?
Say it again. I didn't hear you. Say it again.
I said anything you'd like to say in closing.
Well, I hope that more people do the poll because it's something that we really want to hear from the people that watch this show, love it like us, I hope. And we don't know how many, maybe not a lot, but that's not the point. Whoever's doing the poll, thank you for doing it. And I hope that if you haven't, check it out because it's fun. You get to name who you think that you've seen in your lifetime are the best fighters in those 3 weight divisions. And that's always fun. So I hope you do it. And then next week, I guess, Charles, the 3 of us are going to have our Mount Rushmore also, right? So we will compare our Mount Rushmores, and then Frank will be doing a drum roll on the poll results. And so, yeah, I'm excited. And if this goes over very well, and it sounds like it's going pretty well, we're going to certainly do more of these in the future. So Frank will think of the next poll in less than 18 seconds. So there you go.